everybody. Welcome back to the Cosmic Weather Report. My name is Kyle Butler. I'm one of the co-founders here at Psychedelics Today, and we're joined with Renn Butler and Chad Harris. Welcome, guys.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks,
Chad. Can you do a little bit of an introduction? Let people know who you are.
Sure. My name is Chad Harris. I'm an archetypal astrologer. I've been, I discovered astrology actually October 29th, 1995. And it was my second MDMA experience. And I had an awakening, an insight, an epiphany where I saw the archetypes in my parents, in my girlfriend, my friends. And it was just a simple conversation I was having with a friend of my girlfriend's at the time. And I attended a lecture by Rick Doblin about probably 2 years later or so. And I approached him after the lecture. I said, I'm really interested in the connection between psychedelics and astrology because my transits on that night, where the planets were in relationship to my birth chart, spoke to me. Mercury was exactly in the same place as my natal Uranus. And I thought that was really intriguing. And so I approached Rick Doblin. He said, Stan Groff, and I think his name is Richard Tarnas, they do research in that area on psychedelics and astrology. I was like blown away. And I called Rick about 5 days later and said, this is who I am. This is when I was born, and this is what happened to me on this day. Does it make sense to you? And he called me back a few days later and said, actually, yeah, it was classic for that kind of sudden, unexpected awakening. Like the awakening is Uranus and Mercury is the insight. And he pointed out that not only did I have that transit, Uranus in the sky was beginning to square my natal Mercury. So a 90-degree relationship to my natal Mercury, which is a much longer transit, 3-year transit. And that the combination of the two kind of reinforced the Mercury-Uranus complex. And it made perfect sense to him for that sudden, unexpected insight. It didn't have to be in astrology. It just happened to be what it was for me. And then I basically dropped everything and decided to move to San Francisco to study with him. And that was in 2003. And I worked with him and Stan at the California Institute of Integral Studies until just this past year. So, and and I've been doing readings professionally since 2008. And I find I see the astrological perspective as a form of transpersonal psychology. It's an extension of depth psychology, but it's transpersonal in the sense that it's a reflection of the human soul. Like the soul is reflected in the birth chart, and it allows us to recover that relationship that's been lost in many ways through the scientific paradigm that split matter and spirit, or tried to eliminate secondary qualities from Galileo. And I believe it holds the capacity for us to both individually and collectively recover that relationship with soul or psyche that has in many ways been lost. So.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you. And Renn, do you want to give a little quick intro if this is the first time people are tuning in, and maybe, what's our objective here with the Cosmic Weather Report?
Yeah, really great points, Chad. Thanks for sharing that. We want to look at some of the major astrological alignments, planetary alignments for the month ahead. So for April, to encourage people, to help you to do sessions more responsibly, to understand them better afterwards and integrate them afterwards. And I mean, this is a good way to just talk about some of the issues around deep self-exploration in general. Not everyone who's interested in psychedelics is interested in astrology, of course, and every once in a while we'll get a little trolly comment I notice on Psychedelics Today about what are you talking about astrology. So I just want to just read this brief quote from Stan Groff. This is from my book Pathways to Wholeness, which I think talked about in this podcast, but the book has a lot of session reports in it from mostly high-dose psychedelic sessions, LSD sessions, which I then correlated with the journeyers' astrological transits. So you may find that interesting. So this is a quote from Groff's. Whether the catalyst for entering a non-ordinary state was breathwork, a psychoactive substance or a spontaneous eruption of unconscious contents during a spiritual emergency, archetypal astrology provides, in Groff's words, quote, the only system that can successfully predict both the content and timing of experiences encountered in non-ordinary states of consciousness in experiential psychotherapy. So, Groff is not somebody who just goes around believing every little thing. I mean, he has a crunchy scientific mind, and he didn't immediately gravitate toward astrology, but through observation, they had to accept the observation that it can help us illuminate the content of and themes that emerge in our sessions. So I just mentioned that because many people respect Groff more than astrology, and I just want to
Yeah, thank you for that, Ren. I think that's a good reminder. I always try to remind people why we decide to host this here, because our lineage and foundation is in Groff's lineage, and there was something interesting Groff wrote about, and I know I read this in one of the previous episodes, but when they were trying to figure out, trying to do tests to figure out what could come up in a psychedelic session, all those Western psychological tests, understanding somebody's trauma, their past history, those weren't really great tools. And I think his selling point was actually looking at the astrology, looking at the archetypes, and actually seeing some of that stuff manifest in sessions. And it seemed from his perspective, it was somewhat of a reliable tool to some degree in trying to predict. Because, right, it's so a conversation we've been having pretty often is what is psychedelic informed consent? How do we know what's going to come up in a session? What are the themes that could come up in a session? Are people prepared for that? And maybe this is a tool that people could use just to get some insight and have a framework around.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I highly recommend readings from Chad. It's good to get readings from a number of different astrologers, and he's definitely one of the top archetypal astrologers.
So should we launch into our research here?
Let's do it.
There you go. So this is today, March 30th, and where should we start, Ren? You start at Saturday?
Yeah, why don't we look at Saturday first?
This is Saturday, April 2nd. And there is, well, I think just to begin, the overarching complex that's really governing our month with a real special quality is this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction only happens every 12 years or so, maybe 13 years. And it began several weeks ago getting tight, but it actually perfects this month in the middle of the month. And Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. It tends to magnify and uplift, provide buoyancy or openness to whatever it touches. Neptune is the transcendent great mother goddess. It's the archetypal imagination. It's where the creative inspiration from the archetypal realm really emerges. On some level, the rest of the planets can kind of be seen as, or the rest of the planetary archetypes can kind of be seen as sons and daughters of Neptune in this sense. Neptune, more than any other planetary archetype, instantiates the archetypal realm itself. And the fact that Jupiter is in this tight conjunction, the most potent, or the most potent aspect you can have, the conjunction, really speaks to an opening to the transpersonal realm, to the collective imagination, to personal imagination, to the archetypal realm itself. And we often see where our dreams and our aspirations, our ideas about the collective are heightened during this period. There tends to be an easier access to the transpersonal realms in general, and supported in an optimistic way. Jupiter has a vector towards optimism, whereas Saturn can be pragmatical and serious and discerning. Jupiter is uplifting. It's an open uplifting energy. And it's really a special alignment. I think one way we can just see it collectively manifesting in the world today is the heart chakra opening that's for the Ukrainian people. There's a tremendous amount of compassion for the suffering. I think we're all a little bit more attuned to the suffering that is happening there, because Neptune is the compassionate, the archetype associated with compassion, collective compassion. And I think we're all, vicariously suffering a bit more because of the heightened level of empathy that's taking place. I say suffering like suffering with, and sympathy with the suffering that's taking place there. And let's see, we also have a really, for the past 2 months or so, we've had a Mars-Venus conjunction, and the Mars-Venus conjunction is moving into alignment with Saturn, has been for the past 2 weeks. And the Mars-Saturn conjunction will be perfecting this over the next couple of weeks as well, which can provide a strong work impulse. Like there can be a lot of more, determined energy to manifest things. And with Venus, there's often a real a sense of beauty and value around that work, around working with difficult complexes and potential. And yeah, there's and that alignment will be with us for the good half of the first of the month. And there is actually a tight Mercury Sun conjunction on Saturday in particular. This is about a week-long alignment. And what can happen with the Sun Mercury alignments is the Sun is vital energy, and Mercury is the mind, the way we think, the way we process information, the way we recognize patterns. And the sun can activate that and provide energy to Mercury, to the mind, to the way that we think and process information. It can just provide vitality to the mental activities. So it can be a great time to have inspired thoughts, inspired ideas, and potential for psychological transformation as well, like with the sun just providing energy there. Did you want to add anything to that, Renn?
Yes, yeah, thank you for your really good points. This is quite a spectacular lineup. Let's see, the Mercury's just moving out of orb of that Jupiter Neptune. I guess it really is about half now. The Jupiter Neptune can create a feeling of cosmic safety. Some of the archetypes associated with this are the great benefic, providence, the cornucopia. There can be a feeling of divine consciousness, which Neptune is the astrological symbol that we use to describe the unified field of consciousness underlying all things in astrology, we can feel is friendlier, is more omnipresent, pantheism, polytheism, ecumenical feelings, the genuine religious feelings of exaltation can come from Jupiter Neptune. We can have a sense of creation as a kind of grand museum. All that's really happening is adventures in consciousness. It's just very interesting. At the same time, as Chad pointed out, we have this Venus-Mars-Saturn conjunction. Venus and Mars can be connected with sexual feelings. It's like hot-blooded energies. Venus is connected with pleasure and Mars with passion. So it's the kind of the mixture of those two. But with Saturn there, you may notice in your sessions or in your everyday life, there can be sexual feelings, but there might be conflicts within you, or there can be judgments you'll notice in the world around you, or delays or problems with sexual energies. Maybe not the best time to make overtures to someone you're interested in. All things considered, there are so many other factors, but Mars Saturn's shadow side can be surprisingly harsh or nasty or acrimonious interactions. Things go south much more extremely than we expect sometimes with Mars Saturn. It can be like a sense of boundary collisions. You put yourself out in some way and it hits somebody in their place of fear, their place of defensiveness, Saturn, and then there's a corresponding kind of sharp reaction back, sometimes a negative feedback loop. So it's very good in sessions to sort of work through conflicts about sexuality and to face old wounds and traumas and to kind of struggle with those. It's important to have supportive sitters that are patient with us and, of course, respect the professional boundaries. Venus connected with this Mars Saturn can bring these energies, especially into our friendships and relationships. I've noticed a preponderance this past week of like hitting and whacking, slapping interactions between people. And this could be like friendly backslapping among friends that's a little bit more hard than usual. Then about 4 days ago, I noticed President Biden in Poland was visiting soldiers of the 82nd Airborne Division, and he was talking to a guy and he slapped him pretty hard on the shoulder, like a friendly, manly kind of slap. And I'm like, wow, there's that Venus, Mars, Saturn. I'm sure it didn't hurt the guy, but and then, of course, and Chad wrote about this on Facebook as well. There was the famous slap heard around the world. Will Smith went up on stage and slapped Chris Rock. And that really fits the Mars Saturn. It's like that slapping, whacking kind of energy. But the influence of Venus was interesting. They both did it with smiles. That's Venus, right? Like before, during, and afterward, they were both smiling. And it was just so, it's like so weird. Did that just happen? More viciously and intensely, the missile strikes hitting some of these office buildings in Russia. You see like gaping holes right through them, as Chad said. It's like a knife in the collective heart of humanity. Can be very painful. We have to transcend our species pattern of aggression. These transits can remind us to do that. Watch out for sort of these acrimonious encounters, or sarcastic puncturing and deflating among friends. That seems a little more than you were expecting. One final comment. I was having my one beer at my neighborhood pub, the Bent Mass, before dinner last night. And I walked out and there was a friend who was walking out at the same time, female friend, and we were joking. And she said something about, moms are so important. And I said, yeah, they really are. If it wasn't for my mom, I might not have been born at all. I was trying to make a joke and she slapped me, she whacked me really hard in the arm. It's just like, all right, okay. So no sense of humor. Anyway.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Renn. Yeah, that's interesting what you bring up about the Will Smith incident, and I actually have the chart pulled up here. This is Will Smith's chart on the inside, the natal chart, and his personal transits for the outside. And what Renn is pointing towards is this Mars, Venus, but Saturn conjunction. Mars is about, let's see, 5 degrees away from Saturn, and Mars's energy actually tends to leap forward. We notice that in transits all the time, where like transit orbs, we tend to use 5 degrees, 3 degrees is really tight, but 5 at the edge. But Mars consistently comes in at 7 degrees. It tends to really leap forward in the same way that its energy is impulsive and leaps forward, potentially with aggression, with violence. And what's really interesting about Will Smith's transits in particular is he's born with a Moon-Neptune conjunction. He's typically, I saw an interview with his mom, or just a short clip, where she said that she's never seen him be violent towards anyone, that like this was a complete surprise to her. And you actually see with Moon-Neptune is often a very sensitive constitution, not very aggressive or acting out, more placid in its ability and its orientation. But what's interesting here is Saturn in the sky is at 21 Aquarius. It's an exact square to Will Smith's moon. And in a sense, this Mars-Saturn conjunction, Mars would be conjoining Saturn in the sky, but it'd also be squaring to his natal moon. And what's happening is he feels aggrieved by the joke, and you can see that the moon is in a tight conjunction with Mars. This is collective for everyone, that like where Renn was describing, he's been seeing this, Mars-Saturn energy. But on the night of the Oscars, the moon was there, and the moon is the way everyone's feeling. I mean, it's the way Will Smith is feeling. It's the emotional part of our being. So Mars is in a conjunction with the moon in the sky, and it's squared to his natal moon. And that sense of like irritation in the emotions to want to respond in an aggressive way is very descriptive of that moment. And this is kind of what I was saying, like, this is both the individual soul and psyche that Will Smith is participating in his natal chart, as well as the collective psyche that we all participate in at that time. And it just happened to be that that's the way he embodied it and participated and reacted in that way. And I think going back to our next Saturday, what's interesting about the Saturdays of this month is that the moon will be in a square, or it'll be in the hard aspect alignments with Pluto on every Saturday. So in addition to the Mars-Saturn-Venus alignment and the Jupiter-Neptune alignment we discussed, the moon will be in a square to Pluto. And Pluto is the id, the Freudian id, Darwinian instincts. It's the death rebirth process. It's the third perinatal matrix, whereas the Jupiter-Neptune is the first perinatal matrix, and where Jupiter will expand that potential capacity to connect with the first perinatal Neptunian dimension of our birth experience. But with the moon in strong aspect or hard aspect to Pluto on every Saturday, there's also a propensity to access the third perinatal matrix, to have more death rebirth experiences in the psychosomatic part of our being, which is the lunar dimension of our being. And yeah, so there's a tight square here on the first Saturday of the month. And should we move to the next Saturday, or?
Sure.
I guess also maybe want to point out here is that because the moon moves it goes through the zodiac in about 28 days. And so that's why every 7 days, it's going to still be in alignment with Pluto on the Saturdays that I mentioned. But on the Wednesdays of this month, if we're choosing to do sessions on Wednesdays for any reason, the moon will be in a hard aspect to the Jupiter-Neptune alignment. So there's more of a potential orientation or capacity to tune into the Jupiter-Neptune energy, the first perinatal matrix, and the collective unconscious, and the wellspring of generosity and overflowing of like healing energies from the Neptunian dimension of the psyche. So this is the Wednesday that April, or yes, Thursday, but it's an alignment that Wednesday night into Thursday day in the square to Jupiter-Neptune. And then this is the following Saturday that we mentioned. And here you can see what I was saying. The moon it'll actually be a T square. It'll be opposing Pluto, and there'll be a really tight alignment with a square to Mercury as well. So in addition to the moon Pluto aspect next Saturday, or the Saturday, the 9th of April, Mercury will also be in that alignment in a tight square to Pluto, where you get more of a propensity to tap into the third perinatal matrix and have psychological transformations and depth, like where the mind, Mercury, goes deep into the underworld, into the unconscious, into the psychosomatic part of our being as well with the moon, and specific healing vectors towards the third perinatal matrix and transformation in the death rebirth process.
Yeah, great insights. Yeah, so if you want an easier session this month, maybe Wednesdays would be better. And if you feel the courage to face some of your darker material, maybe Saturdays. we have a finite amount of traumatic material in our individual psyche. So we have to face it sooner or later. If we do enough sessions, we'll face everything inside of us. And basically everyone faces everything sooner or later. So, you can kind of take your pick. The typical pattern with the moon opposition Pluto, of course, we also have on the Saturdays moon trining the Jupiter Neptune.
That's right.
So that's also fairly powerful, moon Jupiter Neptune. The typical pattern would be sense of heavy feelings, sort of emotional, dark feelings and material, which then soothe down into feelings of mystical unity. That we've one trajectory is a kind of like a death rebirth struggle, as Chad said, and then we gradually reconnect with good womb experiences and BPM1, sense of higher meaning.
Yeah, excellent. And that's exactly right. The trine to the Jupiter Neptune can be just a grace of connecting to the healing dimensions of the psyche and the first perinatal matrix. The Mars Venus conjunction will still be in alignment. It's moving towards its end. It's about 9 degrees, 10 degrees being like the world transit orb that we account for Venus Mars alignments. But the Mars Saturn will still be there. And yeah, like Renn was saying, it can bring up conflict energies and the potential for like the aggression of Mars to need resistance, like where what's often good in those types of sessions where you have a lot of vital energy opened up to where you might want like the pillow to pound on to get that energy out, or have, if your sitter is there, to be able to maybe constrain you a bit to like hold in that energy, so you potentially get like the positive triggering of more emotion or more content to come from the unconscious of the psyche to be worked with, like because of that tendency for the second perinatal matrix to feel as though the Saturn matrix to feel that constriction. And often we need to reconnect with that energy to bring up content from that matrix, from the second matrix, into consciousness to be worked with, and in a really safe healing container. It can be really great to actually go into those energies with the safety and like the moon Pluto, like I was kind of focusing on the death rebirth process and stuff, which is very possible, but it also can just be intent, like empowering the emotional depths, like empowering the emotional experience, where you can get in touch with deeper aspects of your emotions, of your body, of the psychosomatic part of our being. And it's like Renn was saying, particularly on the 9th, the trine to the Jupiter Neptune, there's that real possibility for connecting with grace, with the healing dimensions of Neptune, and Jupiter expanding that. So like this is a pretty special alignment to be able to have a powerful, intense experience, but at the same time have the capacity for it to be a real healing kind of mystical opening as well, with the Jupiter Neptune trine moon alignment.
Yes. Yeah. And Rick talks about the dynamic tension exercises. Chad was alluding to this. Charles Atlas, born with Mars square Saturn, pressing our palms together like this, or making fists and growling, willful, deliberate exhales can all help with the Mars Saturn energy, or pressing outward against a hallway or a doorway. I wouldn't do that in the dynamic phase of the session, but later on. Also, wringing a towel can be helpful, or yelling into pillows where we can hold them close or give us a little more air if we need to. We can kind of control that can be a good way to work through those feelings.
Great. So if we move on, every time I click here, I'm moving in days, and this would be the next Wednesday, where the moon will begin the opposition to Neptune, and this is basically noon Pacific time. But then in the evening, or through that night, it will do the opposition to Jupiter Neptune. That would be late in the evening for the East Coast, and into the morning of Thursday for everyone. And but then if we move on to the next Saturday, we have the full moon. So there'll be an exact full moon from the sun at 26 Aries to the moon at 26 Libra, which will perform a T-square with Pluto on Saturday the 16th. And what's taking place here is we're pretty much moving out of the Mars, Venus, Saturn alignment and will be with us for the latter part of March through mid-April. And what's perfecting, like particularly the Jupiter Neptune alignment, becomes exact on, I think, the 13th or something like that, and will be extremely tight all month. But just for this, I guess that week, the midweek of April, it's exact. And what's kind of potentially really helpful here is that Mercury will move into a conjunction with Uranus. And this has the potential for, real awakenings of the mental activities, where insights can come much more quickly, much more freely. There tends to be an acceleration, a rapid kind of acceleration of thoughts. Uranus tends to accelerate energies, and it opens up. It's an awakening influence. It tends to create the capacity to see patterns, the Mercury impulse to recognize patterns in more broad ways, where patterns that you may not have been able to see within your own psyche, within your own life experience, will be more easily recognized, where the insights can come more easily. There's more flow, with the potential for connecting broad patterns that you may not have otherwise seen. And that type of enlightenment, that type of awakening, can really be associated with Mercury Uranus periods.
Yeah, that's a very powerful full moon forming that T-square with Pluto. That's what we want when we're doing deep work. I mean, for me, the more Pluto, the better. I want Pluto to come up. It helps the volcano to press up unconscious material up into consciousness, where it can be faced and released. I like what Chad said about the Mercury-Uranus conjunction. Rick talks about sudden flashes of insight. We can also get in touch with cosmic humor. It's not uncommon in any session that resolves well for us to suddenly, laugh, and, deep suffering or crying can turn into, jocularity and laughing. People could be cracking jokes. They could see the cosmic irony and humor, and feel that it's an intrinsic part of the universal mind, that the gods also like humor, and that it's part of the rich palette of experiences of incarnation. I feel like the Venus is coming already now by this point, the 16th, in orb of the Jupiter Neptune, in a triple conjunction. These are beautifully rich, lush, devotional energies. There can be feelings of devotion toward the divine. It could be the divine feminine or the divine masculine. Of course, these are just faces or personas of the universal consciousness, which transcends all gender, or includes all genders. You may have enhanced access to feelings of rapture or epiphany in the presence of the beautiful music in the session. People will be especially responsive to art and tasteful surroundings and beautiful nature, flowers. After your session, go outside and sit in a flower garden or go for a walk in nature. This is going to be a very special month, and right through the beginning of May, with that Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. The sense of the grand museum of Jupiter, Neptune can have an aesthetic element added to it. So it's like an art gallery. The world has a grand art gallery with beautiful things everywhere we look. a kind of a soiree of souls, this a grand party of the divine incarnating itself as all the different entities in the multi-cosmos that interacting with each other, and in obviously many difficult and painful ways, but following some kind of overall harmonious pattern. We see that in our transcendent moments, how even the dark parts of our life have led us toward these kind of connections with divine harmony, with the divine beauty, and so on.
Yeah, beautiful, Renn. That's absolutely the case. I think we'll also have more of a connection to like the healing energies of Venus, Neptune in particular, and you may find that more like sensitivity to and sensual experiences, like Renn was mentioning, and your surroundings, but also in the aspects of the psyche, where there's a more of a sense of beauty and compassionate love from the cosmos, to where tears of healing, tears of joy and bliss are more likely to be part of the experience, directly coming from the numinous, and like that type of healing energy that is beautiful, that is from a form of grace from the divine. Venus will highlight that quality coming from the Jupiter-Neptune alignment. And I guess we should point out here also that the moon will be in a trine with Saturn on this Saturday, the 16th, where it's in a trine with the Jupiter-Neptune alignment on the 9th. It's in a trine with Saturn, in addition to the T-square with Pluto and the Sun, where our capacity to integrate the emotional experiences that we have, the powerful Moon-Pluto experiences, can be brought into more of a collective, or like a consolidation, where there's a regulation of emotion that can bring it into a kind of grounded sense of one's being. So like the integration of the experiences emotionally can be a little bit favored to come in a more smooth way. So maybe we should move on to again, here's the next following Wednesday.
Look at the 19th, Bicycle Day.
Bicycle Day, that's a great idea, absolutely. Let's see, the Venus Neptune will just be 9 degrees away at that time. The Mercury Uranus will be 3 degrees, Mercury moving out, but still really tight. There'll actually be a Moon Mars square on the 19th, so it could activate more robust emotional experiences, and like actually Moon Mars is great for activity if you're actually wanting to do bicycle riding. Moon Mars you see often with people who really engage with hobbies, and like where their psychosomatic part of their being is really activated and wants to get out and do things. And yeah, we still have the Sun square to Pluto, so going deep into the psyche, highlighting the depths of the experience. Yeah, and that's on the Tuesday, and then let's see, it looks like,
Is that the naked event?
No, Bicycle Day is the LSD holiday with Albert Hoffman.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
the anniversary of Albert Hoffman's first
Okay, yeah,
bicycle ride.
Yeah, well, we don't recommend that you get high and ride your bike.
No, but I do recognize it's a holiday that people do probably engage in.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Kyle. And yeah, so the next Wednesday after that, the day after that, you have the tight Moon Jupiter Neptune alignment that we mentioned before. But if we move on to next Saturday, the 23rd, the next Saturday, April 23rd, basically it's a Moon Pluto conjunction that will be really tight on the day before, on Friday. More in the evening, at least particularly on the West Coast, and yeah, more exact Pluto conjunction around midnight on the East Coast as well. And as we've been mentioning, deepening the psychological experience, the healing experience, going into the depths and working with the emotional realms. And what's nice here is that Jupiter is moving out. It's like beginning to move out of the alignment with Neptune, and it's beginning to move into a sextile with Pluto, which this is really helpful for going deep into the psyche, Pluto, and coming out on top. Anytime there's a Jupiter-Pluto combinations, you tend to see a more robust healing experience. Jupiter is the top of the mountain, it's the elevation, it's the growth experience, it's incorporating larger wholes. And with Pluto, it's being able to go deep, going into the depths of the psyche and coming out with a robust kind of elevated sense and the capacity to integrate the depths of the experience that one has just entered into. Pluto is sextile Neptune for over 100 years. It began around the middle of World War II. So that alignment is something we've really been graced with throughout the entire the second half of the 20th century. Rick has pointed out how he thinks that it's a big part of just like the grace of, basically not having a nuclear war and just being able to not have more world wars since then, but just a balance between the evolution of spirit, Neptune, and the transformational process of Pluto itself. And so, but just the fact that Jupiter is moving tightly into the sextile with Pluto here at the latter part of the month, it could provide more of a capacity to go deep and come out on top, to integrate the experience with more robust kind of optimism and wholeness. And yeah, did you want to say anything, Renn, about this Saturday?
Yeah,
I guess this is
you're on Friday there. Yeah. Again, the Venus, Jupiter, Neptune is getting closer. The sense of a gorgeous temple of the universe as a gorgeous temple, that all that's really happening is a kind of a temporary forgetting of the divine's own nature and then rediscovering of it. And I mean, rediscovering the divine within us and around us is the most amazing experience that any being can have. But you have to lose it first in order to rediscover. So that's all that's really happening on the deepest level, the pulse of the universe. And this is one of those moments when you get to have your eyes opened and see the divine harmony in things. The shadow side of Jupiter, Neptune, as always, can be mirages of prosperity. Jupiter helps things to work out. You've, as Chad said, you feel like you're having healing, and it's affecting your life. It's not just in your fantasy life, but actually in your embodied life. And with that confidence, then people can, by and deeply remembering the periods of scarcity in their lives and the unhealed traumas, they want to sort of maximize those Jupiterian feelings and create sort of institutions in the world, or projects or workshop centers or things like that will have endless spin-off franchise benefits. So watch out for this desire to overly translate your healthy feelings of connection with the divine into material prosperity and success. Your cup will be running over. The cup runneth over with Jupiter, Neptune. And the desire is to get all that water that's fallen off the sides and save it, grab some plastic buckets and save all that water. But it's an archetype, that you're tapping into, and it's the deepest truth about reality. It's the actual, nature of the divine. It's this infinite adventures of consciousness and abundance of experience. And just sink deeply into that without getting up and writing down your great plans to create a multi-million-dollar projects. Aesthetic inflation, people could get in touch with the kind of new age sort of beauty queen side of themselves. It's not, that side isn't really harmful, but just realize that, there are deeper, it's not about our beauty, it's about how beautifully we are fitting in or connecting with the entire cosmos. That's where Aphrodite really reaches her fruition. Now, the Sun, Mercury, Uranus will just be moving out of orb. Uranus is at the midpoint of Sun and Mercury, so it's still acting like a weak conjunction. Electrifying sudden awakenings, of course, and then the Moon-Pluto conjunction that Chad's been talking about, emotional catharsis and abreaction, very supportive for that.
I guess maybe we should also mention that the fact that Mercury will be in a pretty tight square with Saturn on the 23rd, the Saturday the 23rd, and this can make the sessions a little bit more serious, a little bit more pragmatic, like a focus on what's real, what's important. It can bring up some of the challenging experiences, and there can be at times like a sense of, like, I say serious, practical, pragmatic energies in combination with this deeply mystical Jupiter-Neptune alignment. And I think what you said there, excuse me, like not to want to go right down the experience, that's part of like the Mercury-Saturn energy potentially, is to want to bring the content into form, bringing it into some kind of pragmatic approach to make it real, to make it serious, to bring it into manifestation, which can be both that. It can be a way in which we can integrate the experience and bring it into manifestation. But I guess particularly with integration itself in the afterglow, working to ground the ideas in a way that, like journaling and bringing it into form where you have it and good reflective content. This is also the beginning of Mercury trine Pluto, which can deepen the mind, deepen the quality of the experience, the psychological transformation potentially, but in combination with the Mercury-Saturn alignment.
Yeah, good points. I want to just say one more thing about the Mercury, Saturn, Uranus that you talked about. From about the middle of April through maybe 28th of April or something like that, Mercury, Uranus conjunction square Saturn, as Chad mentioned. So the typical pattern could be mental tensions or feelings of mental constriction, BPM 2, and then a sudden intellectual opening or resolution or breakthrough. Right. We could also be thinking about Mercury issues around Saturn and Uranus. So the tension between old Saturn and young Uranus, or between conservative Saturn and liberal Uranus, the culture wars, conspiracy theories and things like that. And we can reach resolutions on those and realize how there are a lot of emotions activated in everybody right now with this Saturn Uranus. Uranus emancipates our Saturnian fear. People have a lot of fear and a lot of sense of being oppressed. And a lot of that is a replay of the memory of birth labor, where we're actually being physically squeezed and compressed and constricted. But then people interpret that or project outward onto the outer situation that, somebody must be doing this to me. I feel afraid, I feel constricted, so somebody's doing this to me. And then they get on to some media bubble and then they get told that this group and that group are the ones that are oppressing you. And I'm not saying it's never true, but the vast majority of our feelings of constriction come from unhealed perinatal material that's already in our psyches. And it takes more courage to face that, the true origin of it, than to just go on accusing this group and that group. And it's easier to do that, honestly, than to face it. So
yeah, excellent points, Renn. That most often when we are projecting fear onto the other, it's sourced in our own personal unconscious and in the perinatal. Yeah, really, really excellent points. And I guess moving on to the final Saturday, this is a really special alignment. Let me see if I can do the hours correctly, because this lunar Saturday, next Saturday, April 30th, is the first solar eclipse of the year. It occurs at 10 degrees Taurus in a tight conjunction with the planet Uranus. And eclipses there are new moons. It's solar eclipses is a new moon we get every month, but the eclipses themselves are when it becomes exact. And what I've noticed with eclipse energy and doing sessions on those time periods is a real interplay between shadow and consciousness, and the masculine and the feminine, of course, but like where the deep relationship between the unconscious and consciousness is, there's less of a boundary between the two, where the unconscious dimensions of the psyche, of the collective psyche, of the personal psyche, it's easier for the unconscious material to come up during eclipses, and specifically around relationships, how one relates to the world, the relationship, your relationship history, and just in general, how one relates with their unconscious, with their shadow. And it can be a really great time to work on those aspects of oneself. And particularly with Uranus there, it's going to liberate the energies, the whole interplay, the conjunctio between the masculine and feminine, lunar and solar, in a really profound way. And this will be when Venus is in exact alignment with Jupiter, really tight with Neptune. Mercury will be in a really tight trine with Pluto, all sextiling Jupiter. So it'll be Mercury, Jupiter, Pluto all together. So the capacity to have, expansive Mercury, Jupiter insights, awakenings, and powerful transformational energies with Pluto, and in combination with the solar eclipse and all of the unconscious material that it could help us access, really speaks to a profound moment in time where you can really connect with the depth of your soul, and on a collective level as well.
Some people recommend maybe that people shouldn't do journeys on eclipses. I haven't had enough experience myself. I kind of poo-pooed the idea. Somebody mentioned this in one of our previous ones last fall, and then I actually had a quite challenging experience on an eclipse. After that. I think it was in November. And so just follow the usual protocols of safe set and setting. It tends to be an intense time. So if you have any doubts, maybe consider doing your session on the Friday or the Sunday. But I don't think they're unlucky. They're just very intense. So if you have a support of people there, you can reach out and hold their hand if you need and get encouragement. The Venus, Jupiter, Neptune is Venus, Jupiter is exact on this particular day, and very strong for the second half of April and first half of May. Just such rich and lush, enchanting, gorgeous, sublime, ethereal energies. You cannot ask for more graceful, beautiful energies than this. And this is almost like a kind of a trump card, for lack of a better word, for sessions resolving in a positive way. The divine grace is just so full-bodied and generous and abundant, mid-April through mid-May. So I hope you will all enjoy those energies. Mars is now beginning to move into the picture by this point, which will add more dynamic energy to this. I like that alignment a lot. Neptune softens and spiritualizes Mars. Not too strong by the end of April, but in the following week. Chad mentioned the Sun, Moon, Uranus conjunction. So sun and moon, as he alludes to, connections are connected with the interaction between the yin and yang elements within us, between our conscious will, sun, and our unconscious emotions, moon, between daytime and nighttime, between the individual purposeful side of ourselves, sun, and the connected community, family, immersed side of us, moon. We need both of these to be a healthy and whole human being. And Uranus can help us to have breakthroughs around those issues. If we're habitually more yang, we can find our yang is being kind of humbled in certain ways while our yin is being emancipated, but they want to work together. There's no battle between these archetypes. They are part of one consciousness. And we, or the other way around, if we don't have enough individuality or sense of selfhood, and we're very emotional, that the sun can be kind of lifted up and equal partner to the moon. So breakthroughs around gender in an alchemical way, within us. It's happening within our psyches, which is where the really most important breakthroughs happen, in between the gender and yin and yang within us, in our own psyches.
Yeah, that's great, Renn. Yeah, I would second that about the eclipses and sessions. Is they, in my personal experience, they're more intense. There's a pretty decisive increase in intensity, and so I guess if you're not wanting to have really intense experiences, you may want to consider that. But that if you are seeking really powerful transformational experiences, I think eclipses actually have been really healing in my personal experience, to actually embrace that intensity and have more cathartic sessions around it. So
oh, that's a great reminder, Chad. Thanks for sharing that. The two experiences that I had during eclipses that weren't so positive, I was alone both times, and it would have been much better if I'd had someone there. So that is one of the most important ways we can take care of ourselves. Have a trusted guide or sitter.
Yeah, good, excellent points. And I guess maybe we could just say, as here in closing, to consider, where these alignments are happening in your chart. Where is the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction taking place in your chart throughout this month, and like where does the eclipse happen in your natal chart by transit? These are really important dynamics as to how you're personally going to experience and participate in the alignments. And I would also look not only just at your where your particular planet alignments are, but maybe check your midpoints. Like, say you don't have anything that's at the 24th degree of Pisces necessarily, but you may have a significant midpoint between any two other planets that's at 24 Pisces, or maybe at 24 Virgo, where you will have more of an access to the Jupiter-Neptune energy relative to the midpoint that is in alignment with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. So that would go for any of the planets, to look at those for your personal transits as well.
Great. So I guess we can end the screen share. Yeah, good job.
Excellent.
Oh, we hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Renn, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Any final thoughts on your end?
Yeah, really excellent, Chad. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
With us.
Yeah, it was great.
I want to tell people about the Groff Legacy training. Just remind people about it. This is the new international training that Stan Groff and Brigitte Groff are launching, and I highly recommend it. So you can go to the international website, grofflegacytraining.com, with hyphens in there, or just Google it. If you're in the US, it's grofflegacyprojectusa.org. there are hyphens between all of those words. Groff Legacy Project USA.org. And that's a very solid group of trainers, and highly recommend that if you want to learn how to be a better sitter and also have the credibility of the certification. They're putting that together right now, and I highly recommend it.
Are they doing breathwork training within that as well?
Yes, it will be focusing on breathwork.
Oh, wonderful, sweet.
Yeah, so there won't be doing any illegal substances, but there'll be a lot of talk about psychedelics, and the same techniques are used to support people in psychedelic journeys as in breathwork. Yeah,
wonderful. Yeah,
excellent.
Definitely check that out. Exciting that they finally launched that again.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Renn. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts on your end, Chad?
I'm just wishing the best for everyone. Take it slow, and pay attention to your personal transits. And I think most alive for the month of April is clearly the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, and basically the capacity to experience and participate in the archetypal realm is more prevalent at this moment. And it's an amazing time to do sessions, breathwork or otherwise, where there's clearly more accessibility to the depth of the soul, the depth of the human psyche. That's where, ultimately what we're striving to do, in addition to heal our own personal unconscious and relative to our personal perinatal traumas, is to move into a relationship with the archetypes, with the gods and goddesses, which are they're not out there in the planets, like they're actually in the interior and of the psyche. And it's the alignments allow us to move into a particular relationship. It's a participatory process that's happening in any session, and we can cultivate that awareness. We can cultivate a relationship with them, and that understanding, that orientation is, I guess, what James Hillman would describe as cultivating the archetypal eye. And that's ultimately what we're striving to do, is be able to identify the energies, the gods and goddesses, even without the planetary transit, so that you can identify it and know when Mars comes in or Venus, and you develop a conscious relationship with the archetype. That as that relationship develops, it does just that. It develops, it unfolds with more and more depth, and we can gain more wisdom from the wisdom that's inherent in the archetypes themselves and incorporate it into our lives, so that we are less unconscious of that relationship that's always present.
Yeah. So get a reading with Chad. I'm also offering my 21-week course again, starting in September, if people want to learn more about all of this.
And Chad, where can people find you?
Archetypalview.com. It's ARCHETYPALVIEW.com.
And
I'm RennButler.com, the two N's.
Awesome, wonderful. And a reminder for those that are watching it over here at Psychedelics Today, you can also check this out and check out more of Renn's work and everybody else part of the Archetypal News Network. You can just type that into YouTube there, the Archetypal News Network. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to it, and also if you have any questions, comments, leave them down in the chat. So Chad, Renn, really appreciate your time here and sharing all your insights, and we'll catch everybody next time on the Cosmic Weather Report for May. So take care, everybody.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks, Chad.